Hi guys, it's your boy Luaron here, and today we're gonna talk about CSS. Yes, so CSS is a core language of the web. It describes the presentation of our document. When I started writing CSS a decade ago, it was strange. Somehow easy, somehow complex. It was lacking in capabilities, so what was there was generally easy to understand, but hard to use. Now CSS is more complete than ever, and knowing it doesn't mean anything anymore. Understanding it is what's important. And today we're going to have a peek at the basics of CSS. You heard that? A peek at the basics. Don't worry, we're gonna get deep in later videos. So, how to write CSS? It's just like giving instructions. If you say make this element's background yellow and the size of its font 16 pixels, it's what you just said, but made easy with brackets, colons, and semicolons. When we want to target an element or multiple elements, we use selectors. This is a declaration. A declaration is composed of a property and one or multiple values. Where can we put our CSS code? Well, firstly, in the element style attribute. This is called inline styling. We don't need selectors here as we're already on the elements attribute. We just put declarations. Secondly, inside the style tag of our HTML file. Put it inside our head tags and we're good. Lastly, inside a separate file, like we did with our HTML file, but just with the CSS extension. After creating the file, we add a link to it inside our HTML file for it to be used there, and we're ready to put CSS inside our CSS file. So what can we select? You can select everything. You can select elements using tags. This is called the type selector, with their IDs, their classes, attributes, and more. You can use comma to apply the same style to multiple selectors. And there are elements, part of other elements, that are there that we can ignore, but that can also be manipulated if we wanted to. These are pseudo elements. Other than these, there are combinators and pseudo selectors. We're gonna talk about them when doing projects where we can use them. Let's take a look at some properties. The display property. Elements can be not displayed, displayed inline, or with the values block, flex, grid, and more. Here is a concept that we need to understand. It is called the box model. Every element present on the page is represented as a box. Know that there can be some restrictions based on the element's display property. What we naturally see is the content, but the content box's border are not defined by its content. The content can leap outside the borders. That is called an overflow. Is it good? Even if it's called overflow, like overflowing. You can even call it a breakthrough. But it's not something we generally want in CSS. Our element size is adjusted using the width and the height properties. A border may have some values, its width, style, and color. If we want to have a space between the border and the content, more precisely the content box, we have what we call padding. And the space around the element that is part of the element but outside the element is the margin. Feel free to play with the box model pen that I have created and put in the description below. Now let's talk about the background property. It applies to the element, not its border and margin. We mostly put colors and images as background. Now the position property. How do we position our element? There's the how to not position our element, which is our default value. Similar to writing position is static. When our element isn't statically positioned, we can freely position it with the top, left, right, and bottom properties. Relative positioned elements are positioned relative to where it would naturally be. Its offset doesn't affect any other elements, thus the space originally given to it is the same. Absolute and fixed positioned elements are removed from the normal document flow. Fixed is relative to the viewport. Absolute is relative to its closest parent. A sticky positioned element is treated as relatively positioned until its containing block crosses a specified threshold, at which point it is treated as stuck or fixed until meeting the opposite edge of its containing block. So far we've talked about colors and lengths. There are different ways to set colors with color names like yellow, white, black, green. With hexadecimals, we can talk more about it if you want. Put it in the comment. With RGB or RGBA, A is for alpha. Alpha means transparency. And HSL or HSLA, which stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. We can also use gradients. And in gradients, we can use the previous values to gradually change. Wow, this is deep, guys. This is deep. This is also gonna need some design theory because you don't just put any colors you want on your page. And we've also talked about lengths. Lengths can be written in different units. Like we can use absolute units, like we use like centimeters, millimeters, inches, and pixels. We can also use lengths relative to the font size, which are EM, RAM, and CH, and more. We'll see how to use these later. We can use lengths relative to the viewport, like the viewport height, the viewport width, the minimum viewport of the height and the width, and the maximum, which is Vmax. We can also use percentage and calculations too. Wow, there's so many things. Don't worry, we're gonna get deep into this later, okay? We can also select the state of an element. When it's hovered, for example, these are called pseudo-classes, to have different appearances in different states. Then we can have transitions between different states with the transition property. Did you know that we can animate in CSS? Well, you already know. Of course, there are pages that you're seeing that there are animations on, and we can do it with CSS. It's not that we can do it with CSS, it's all in CSS, okay? Most of it at least. Just choose the property you want to animate, say from where, or from what, to what, done! And trust me, you don't want your page to look the same on mobile and on your big screen. We can do just that with media queries. So we're gonna have CSS projects in the future to have a deeper understanding of more features and properties. CSS is such a huge topic, and remember, understanding how it works is more important, and then you can search later if there are things you don't remember. I want people to talk about everything about CSS, even if I wanted to. If you want to be a CSS hardcore, check out Kevin Powell. And there is also the CSS podcast if you want to listen to CSS. I found this out last week and it's really cool. And links in the description. So that's it for today. See you in the next video.